Hi friends, and welcome to Folklore Diaries. Here, we share real-life horror stories and chilling legends from around the world. Some of them happen to our listeners, others have been passed down for years. So get comfortable but stay alert, because the next story might just keep you awake tonight. And if you like true horror stories, consider subscribing. Okay, let's begin. In a quiet village in northern Thailand, the river was life itself. It wound through the valley like a silver snake, feeding the rice fields, cooling the air, and giving fish to the people who lived along its banks. Children played in its shallow parts during the day, splashing and laughing until their parents called them home. At night, the water grew still, reflecting the moonlight like a mirror. But not all voices near the river belonged to the living. For generations, villagers had whispered of the crying child, a spirit said to appear at the water's edge when the world grew quiet. He was small, no more than 7 years old, with wet clothes clinging to his thin frame. His voice was soft, like a song carried by the current. And always, he asked the same question, "Can you carry me across?" No one ever returned if they said yes. The story began long ago. Some said the boy was the son of a fisherman who drowned during a storm. Others believed he was a child abandoned by his parents, left to starve by the river. The details changed from mouth to mouth, but the warning was always the same. If you heard a child crying by the river at night, you must never look, never answer, never help. The elders said that those who tried to carry him across felt his weight grow heavier with every step. What began as the light body of a boy soon turned into a crushing burden. Before they could reach the other side, their bones snapped under the strain, and their lifeless bodies sank into the water, never seen again. The boy was lonely, and he wanted company in the river forever. In the village lived 3 friends who had grown up together: Nairan, strong-willed and curious; Dao, gentle and cautious; and Kiet, the jokester of the group. They were in their late teens, restless in the small town, always looking for something to do once the sun went down. One humid evening, as crickets sang and the villagers prepared for bed, the 3 gathered near the riverbank. A full moon floated above the trees, casting silver light across the slow-moving water. Kiet skipped a stone across the surface. "You know the old story, right? The one about the crying boy." Dao shivered. "Don't talk about that here." Nairan smirked. "Why not? It's just a story to scare kids, so they don't wander near the river at night. My grandfather told me the same thing when I was little." "But what if it's not just a story?" Dao whispered, her eyes scanning the reeds swaying by the water. Kiet laughed. "If the boy shows up, we'll just tell him to swim. Problem solved." Nairan chuckled, but his gaze lingered on the dark water. A part of him, though he wouldn't admit it, wanted to know if the legend was true. The 3 friends sat by the water, talking quietly. The night was peaceful, the river glistening in the moonlight. Then, faintly, almost hidden among the sounds of the crickets, they heard it. A cry. It was soft at first, like the whimper of a small child. Dao stiffened, clutching her knees. "Did you hear that?" Kiet's smile faded. "Probably just a bird." But then it came again, clearer this time. A child's voice, carrying across the water. "Please, someone help me." The 3 froze. Nairan's heart pounded in his chest. The voice was thin and weak, trembling with sadness. Dao whispered, "It's him." The crying child. The reeds at the far bank rustled, and a small figure stepped out into the moonlight. It was indeed a boy, no older than 7, his clothes clinging to his body as though he had just pulled himself from the water. His hair dripped, his bare feet left no sound on the wet sand. He looked across at them, his face pale in the moonlight, his eyes glistening with tears. "Can you carry me across?" he asked, his voice barely louder than the rippling current. Dao's breath caught in her throat. She clutched Nairan's arm. "Don't answer. Don't even look at him." But Nairan couldn't look away. The boy's voice was so fragile, so sad. He looked lost, like a child abandoned by the world. "Please," the boy whispered again. "I just want to go home." The river flowed quietly between them, silver and endless. The moon hung high above the river, casting silver ripples that seemed to stretch forever. The boy stood on the far bank, dripping water, his small figure trembling as though he was cold. "Can you carry me across?" he asked again, his voice thin, desperate. Dao tightened her grip on Niren's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't listen. Don't look. If we pretend we didn't hear, he'll go away." Kiet forced a nervous laugh, though his voice cracked. "Maybe he's just a lost kid. What if he really needs help?" Dao turned sharply toward him. "Kiet, no. My grandmother told me this story since I was a child. He's not alive. He's—" Before she could finish, the boy spoke again, his tone pleading. "Please, I just want to go home. I can't cross alone. Will you help me?" The sound of his voice seemed to echo inside their heads, soft yet impossible to ignore. Niren swallowed hard. He had always told himself he didn't believe in ghosts. He had laughed at the stories, brushed them off as old warnings meant to keep children safe. But now there was no denying what stood before him. The boy's figure shimmered faintly in the moonlight, too pale, too perfect, as though the water itself had shaped him. His eyes, wide and glistening, stared directly into Niren's, filled with sorrow. "Maybe," Niren muttered, his voice unsteady. "Maybe he just needs one of us to walk him across. If it were my little brother, lost like that, I'd want someone to help him." Dao shook her head violently. "No, Niren. That's what he wants you to think. That's how he lures people in. Once you pick him up, you'll never come back." Niren clenched his fists, torn between pity and fear. The boy took a step closer to the water, though he did not sink. Ripples spread out around his bare feet as he walked across the shallow edge. His voice grew softer, breaking with sobs. "I don't want to be alone anymore. Please, I'm so cold." Kiet's face softened. He had always been quick to joke, but his heart was softer than he let on. He bit his lip, staring at the child. "We can't just leave him. What if he's real?" Dao's voice trembled with frustration. "He's not real, Kiet. Don't you understand? He's already dead. That's why he cries. That's why he waits here every night. He wants to take someone with him." But Kiet was no longer listening. He stepped closer to the edge, his shoes sinking into the damp sand. The river glistened under his feet. The boy's eyes lit up faintly. He stretched out a hand across the water. "Please carry me." "Kiet, don't!" Dao shouted, grabbing his arm. But Kiet pulled away. "Just wait. If he's real, if he's just a boy, I'll help him across and prove it. Then we can stop being scared." Niren's chest tightened. "Kiet, think about what you're doing." But it was too late. Kiet waded into the water, the cold current swirling around his legs. The boy smiled faintly through his tears and stepped forward to meet him. When Kiet reached out, his hand touched the boy's. The contact was icy, like plunging into deep water. A shock ran up his arm, but he gritted his teeth and lifted the child onto his back. The boy clung to him, his small arms wrapping tightly around Kiet's shoulders. His wet clothes soaked through Kiet's shirt. "It's okay," Kiet said, forcing a smile toward his friends on the shore. "See? He's just a kid. I'll be fine." But Dao's face drained of color. "Kiet, look at the water." At first, Kiet felt only the slight weight of a child. He took one careful step into the river, then another. The current was strong but manageable. Then the boy grew heavier. It was subtle at first, a shift in weight, like carrying a sack of rice instead of a child. Kiet adjusted, gritting his teeth. But with every step, the boy pressed down harder, his body growing denser, heavier, as though stones were filling his frame. By the time Kiet reached the middle of the river, his knees trembled. His breath came in short gasps. The boy's arms tightened around his neck, squeezing until it was hard to breathe. Dao screamed from the shore. "Drop him, Kiet! Drop him now!" Kiet staggered, his feet slipping on the slick stones beneath the current. His muscles burned, his back screamed in pain. The boy's head leaned close to his ear, and in that soft, broken voice he whispered, "Don't let me fall. Take me all the way, you promised." Niren splashed into the river, trying to reach his friend. But as he drew closer, he saw Kiet's face contort in agony. Veins bulged in his neck, sweat poured down his forehead. The child on his back was no longer small. His frame swelled with unnatural weight, pressing Kiet lower and lower into the water. Kiet's eyes widened in terror. "He's so heavy. I can't." The boy's voice interrupted, calm and cold now. You promised to carry me. You can't stop. Kit stumbled, the water rising to his chest. His legs buckled as though the weight on his back was that of a full-grown man, or something heavier still. Nyron shouted, panic in his voice. Kit! Let him go! But Kit could not. The boy's arms were locked tight around his neck, his grip unbreakable. Dao screamed again from the shore, her voice breaking. It's the legend. He's going to crush him. And in the moonlight, the boy's tearful face twisted into something else, something cruel, his lips curling into a smile that was anything but human. The night was alive with the roar of the river. Silver waves clashed and foamed, as though the water itself raged at the scene unfolding in its depths. Kit's knees buckled as he struggled forward, every step sinking deeper into the stones. The child on his back was no longer light, no longer human. His weight pressed down like boulders, like the river itself had climbed onto Kit's shoulders. Help me! Kit gasped, his voice breaking, but his arms were pinned tight. The boy's grip locked around his neck like iron. Dao's screams cut through the night. Kit! You have to drop him. He's not a child, he's death itself. Nyron plunged through the water, fighting the current as it pulled at his legs. His chest burned with fear. He had to save Kit. He couldn't lose his friend, not like this. Kit, hold on, he cried. I'm almost there. But when Nyron reached out, his hand passed through something icy, something that didn't feel like flesh. The boy's body shimmered like mist, yet his weight crushed Kit deeper and deeper. The boy turned his head slowly, his pale face inches from Nyron's. His eyes were no longer sad. They were empty, black pools of hunger. One more step, he whispered. He must finish what he started. Nyron recoiled, his skin crawling at the sound of that voice. It wasn't the voice of a child anymore. It was ancient, hollow, and full of malice. Kit's legs gave out. With a choked cry, he sank to his knees, the water rising past his chest. The boy's weight pressed harder, heavier, as if an entire mountain now sat upon him. His head dipped below the surface, bubbles rushing upward as he thrashed in panic. No! Nyron roared, diving forward, gripping his friend's arm. He pulled with all his strength, but Kit's body wouldn't move. It was as if invisible chains bound him to the river. Dao collapsed on the shore, sobbing, powerless to stop what was happening. It's the legend, it's real. The river won't let him go. The boy's laughter echoed across the water, soft at first, then growing louder, a chilling sound that didn't belong to any human throat. He promised, and now he belongs to me. With one final heave, the weight crushed Kit beneath the surface. His scream was cut short by the rushing water. The boy clung tighter, dragging him down into the depths. The river swallowed them both. For a moment, the river grew eerily calm. The ripples faded. The moonlight shimmered on a smooth, quiet surface as though nothing had happened. Nyron stood frozen in the shallows, chest heaving, his hand empty where Kit's had been. His body trembled with shock. Kit, no, he whispered, his voice breaking. Dao stumbled forward, falling to her knees at the edge of the shore. Her cries echoed into the night, and then slowly the water stirred. From the middle of the river, a figure rose. Not Kit, the boy. He stood on the water's surface once more, pale and dripping, just as he had appeared before. His head tilted, his wide eyes gleaming in the moonlight. He smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened. Can you carry me across? He whispered again. Dao screamed in horror. Nyron staggered backward, his heart hammering in his chest. The boy took one step closer to the bank, then another. His voice was soft, but now it carried a cruel echo that filled the night. Please, won't you help me? I don't want to be alone anymore. Dao grabbed Nyron's arm, dragging him back from the water's edge. Don't look at him. Don't listen. But Nyron's eyes remained locked on the figure. His chest tightened with rage and grief. He wanted to scream, to fight, to pull Kit back from wherever the river had taken him. But deep down, he knew it was useless. The boy was no child. He was something older, something bound to the river itself. Dao sobbed into her hands. He's gone. Kit's gone, and now it's looking for the next one. The boy's faint sobs carried over the water, blending with the rush of the current. He waited patiently, like he always did, for the next traveler who would pity him enough to make the fatal promise. And so the legend continued. The child who cried at the riverbank, forever waiting, forever hungry. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And remember, not every shadow is empty, and not every voice in the dark is in your head. Good night, and stay safe.